Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cupid's Coach podcast. I'm your host, Julie Ferman, inviting you to transform me to we by doing dating better. I have a really interesting guest today. It's Holly Moore. She has a podcast of her own, Made for More, and she and I are on the opposite ends of marriage. I'm in the let's get married or let's meet to think about maybe hanging in together. And Holly's on the other end of it as a family law professional. Welcome to the program, Holly.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, being on your podcast was a huge, just wonderful day in my life. You're so much fun to play with. You think family law, you'd think it'd be kind of heavy, but you have this bubbly, buoyant personality.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that we get to have another play date because, yeah, we had a lot of fun with you too and got great feedback from you being on Made for More. So, yeah, I'm
Well, and then
glad
you
that
sent
we're
me,
meeting again.
you sent me Sherry's berries.
Yes, yes, of
I
course. We
mean,
have to show our appreciation.
that was really special. And I even got to eat two of them. And then I made the mistake of not eating another one because my husband ate them all the next day. But
Oh,
he's
gosh.
a big fan of Holly Moore. He thinks you're really
Oh,
wonderful,
oh, good. Very good.
especially when I showed him how adorable you are. And he said, "Well, where is this girl, Holly?" "Oh, she's in California." So first off, what motivated you to get into family law? It's so specialized, and I always wonder what causes somebody to choose it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I've said this before and I'll say it again, Julie. Family law does you don't find family law finds you. And so it's kind of interesting because I think people maybe assume that I'm a child of divorce, or maybe I've been divorced, or divorce has been a big part of my life because that's basically my whole professional life is divorce and custody battles. But none of that is true. Like my parents are still married 50, almost 2 years later. I've been married for almost 21 years. So it's kind of an interesting thing. All of my childhood friends their parents are still married. Like divorce really hadn't been a part of my inner circle growing up, or really even now as an adult. Personally, I mean, obviously professionally, it's a huge part of my life. But I started off as a lawyer working in construction defect. And what that is really wealthy land developers suing really wealthy subcontractor companies for kind of ridiculous reasons. And it's a ton of paperwork and it's a ton of litigation that lasts for years. And each lawsuit has like at least 30, parties to the lawsuit. And in doing that, I just felt like this does not feel good to my soul. I can't believe I went to law school and racked up all those student loans to do this. And so, interestingly enough, at the time, the law firm that I was working for, one partner did the construction defect stuff, and the other partner did divorce, did family law. I mean, it was a very odd combination for a law firm, but so be it. And so I expressed to the other partner, my sort of discontent with the construction defect world, the civil litigation world. And she said, come work under me and see that if that's a better fit. So I did just that. And immediately it felt so much better to my soul because I felt like I was helping people, and I felt like the clients really needed someone that had a bit of a human side to them and some kindness and grace and all of that. And the rest is history.
It's wonderful. I'm glad to hear it. Now, I don't think I know the answer to this question. How did you meet your husband?
Oh, we are from the same tiny little small town in the Sierra Nevada mountains in between Twain Harte and Yosemite. And everybody's like, "Oh, you were high school sweethearts." No, we were not. We did not start dating until we had both moved away from that tiny little small town. I was actually in law school, and we dated for I think all of about 4 months, and then got engaged and married.
Quick, yeah. Gil and I
Yeah.
got engaged in 5 weeks, married in 5 months, pregnant 2 months after that. And this man was 44, never married. And he will tell you that before that, when it came to his love life, nothing happened.
Really? I guess when it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I watch statistics, and I've got almost 40,000 people that I have registered privately in my matchmaking community since I launched in LA. That was 2001. And one of the statistics that's remained consistent is when people check those boxes, um, women are 3 times as likely as men to check that, "Yes, I want to be married" box. Men are more
Okay.
likely to check the maybe box. Like,
Hmm.
well, depends on who I meet. If I meet the right person, that's what I hear. And
Hmm.
then on the other question about children, having children, just as many men are making babies as women, it takes two
It
after
takes
all.
two.
But men, let's see, let's put it this way. Women are 4 to 5 times as likely to check the yes, I want to make a baby box. Men, again, will say,
Mm,
maybe, depends on who I meet. It's like
okay.
with guys, they have to be inspired by a particular woman to make that level of commitment.
Mm.
Now, there's a statistic that I'm familiar with, but I'm curious with you in your world, who do you see initiating divorce more, women or men in your practice?
Definitely women. Yeah, definitely women, and I think that is supported by the statistics, is that more women definitely initiate divorce.
Well, I understand that 2/3 of the divorces in our country are initiated by women, which I find interesting. Because every day of my life in doing consultations with women and men, one of
Yep.
the things that women will consistently complain about is that they think men are commitment phobes.
Mm,
And I think that maybe the reason they seem to be more reticent about that level of commitment is because maybe they're a little bit more serious about it. They don't expect to get divorced. And
yes.
women are more like one of my colleagues calls us conditionally committal, like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in till he loses his job, till he
Yeah,
cheats
till
on
something
me.
better comes along. Yeah.
I'm just not feeling it anymore," you know? So, it's a
Yes.
very interesting thing, and what are the reasons that you find commonly, or like the patterns, why are women asking for divorce?
So that's a really good question. And I actually think my answer to that question, it has evolved over the years. When I was a lot younger and dumber, it seemed like, okay, the common reasons are, money, infidelity, addiction, substance issues, things like that. Then I came to learn that all of those are just symptoms of much bigger problems. Those really aren't the reasons why people get divorced. Those are just how the problems in the marriage are sort of manifesting themselves. And then I would say more recently, I've really kind of been studying more, learning more about, and really sort of taken with the idea of the imbalance of the masculine and feminine. And I think right now in my life and in my career, I'm really seeing how the imbalance of that is really causing a lot of the issues in marriages.
Tell
Women
me
are,
more about that.
yeah.
Like, in what ways are masculine and feminine, those energies, in what way is it problematic today more so than it might have been 20 years ago, longer?
Yeah, I think, well, okay, so let me just start by saying I am definitely no expert, and I'm just sort of dipping my toe into this whole field, because it is, once you kind of dip your toe, like anything, it's like a whole big world, and there's a lot of experts and very well read, well versed people in it. But from what I can see, and from my perspective, women, and I think it's probably because of feminism and the evolution of women and becoming more independent. Women are sort of taking on this persona of like, I don't need a man. I can make the money. I can do this. I can do that. And men are just becoming like whiny little bitches, I can't think of a better term. And I actually kind of, it's not anybody's fault. Like, it's not, I'm not blaming the women and I'm not blaming the men. I'm just kind of saying like we've really foobarred this whole thing up, because I believe men and women actually really need each other. And it's really actually a beautiful balance. I'm a person of faith. So I'm like, well, God created it this way to be like this beautiful, energetic balance where the man is like the logical, reasonable one who will keep everything grounded. And the woman is kind of like up, in la la land and in her intuition and emotions. And together it makes this beautiful combination. But we've really kind of messed the whole thing up. That's kind of the point that I've come to right now in my life and in my career.
I would tend to agree with a lot of that. Men need to feel needed. They are by
Mhm.
nature
Yes.
provider and protectors. And so if it's not so much that we shouldn't be strong and capable and competent, but it's the way we can be about it that gives the man the impression that he doesn't matter, he's not enough, he's not
Right.
important, her other things in her life are more important than he is. And so it starts to erode.
Yes.
It's a discipline and it's a practice. How do you, in your relationship, keep this masculine feminine in balance? You're a high powered executive. How do you do it?
Well, I'm not high powered around my husband. I
So
mean,
you just answered it. So you have a toggle switch.
I do. I really do. And I don't know how or why I learned to do that, but very early on I did. And I feel like I have to give the credit to my husband, Jeff, because he is very much the leader of our family in so many ways. Um, energetically, I mean, he always takes care of everything. I mean, we recently traveled somewhere together and I was literally like giggling in my head thinking what a different experience it is to travel with him, and I travel a lot by myself. And like when I'm with him, he's like, "Do you I don't even see your wallet or your purse. Like, do you have your ID because you will need that to get on the plane?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I don't know." He's like, "It's okay. I have your passport." Like he just takes care of everything. He takes such good care of me that there has really not been, I mean, of course, there's been times where it's like we've both messed that up too. But in general, like he takes such good care of me. In general, there's not really space for me to have to step up and like lead and be the one in power and be in my masculine. So I think I have to really kind of give him the credit where it's like I can just come home, hang up my Superman cape, my Superwoman cape, and it's like he just takes care of everything.
It's beautiful. Can you do me a favor and send over some DNA for clones?
I
I know a lot of
know.
women who want to meet a man like that because
I
they're
know.
rare in today's world. We have
Very
gotten
rare.
strong enough that we have um, caused men to be less masculine.
Yes.
Part of it is we're
Right.
not fanning the flame. We're not telling them how much we appreciate it. We're sort of
Right.
like expecting it. And then when we step in and do it, oh no, no, I can do it myself.
Right.
I don't need you for this. I don't need you for that. And then they're like, well, what do you need me for?
Right.
Now, the question that I want to ask you is related to something that I hear from women every day of my life, and I think it's an overused word, and that is narcissism. What
Mm.
percentage of women sit at your desk and tell you that their husbands are narcissists, and they're using the term like they're a psychiatrist?
Okay, so this is one of my pet peeves actually, because we get calls all the time from people. Do you guys have experience with divorcing a narcissist? Most of the women that come in, well, my husband is a narcissist. And truth be told, there's literally like, it's like less than 1% of people actually diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And I actually kind of was talking about this on a recent episode of Made for More because the guest was saying, her work deals with divorcing a narcissist. So I kind of pressed her on the issue, like, okay, are all these people really narcissists? And I mean, she did bring up a good point. She's like, well, they're unlikely to go in and get diagnosed, which okay, I could accept that. Um, but I mean, in reality, I think it's so few people that are truly narcissists. But I wrote an article a while back for our newsletter saying narcissist is the new black because this is the new buzzword. I mean, every man is a narcissist. Everybody's divorcing a narcissist. Everybody's co-parenting with a narcissist. It's definitely the new buzzword. And I think, maybe that person is just a dick, but doesn't necessarily mean they're a narcissist.
But what I like to do when I hear it is sort of stop them and say, let's talk about a certain quality, a certain thing that happened, a certain way that he is, or a way that she is, rather than labeling. It was interesting. We're recording today on the day of the United States election,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's fascinating because I encourage people, don't ask. Who did they vote for? Who will they
Right.
vote for? Often there's not really that many great choices. Like we don't get to vote for who we really would want to sit in that seat. So
Right.
what I encourage people to do instead is talk about the policy issues that really matter to you. I want
Right.
people to be coming together because they have shared values, shared passions, and rather than just labeling, oh, you voted for that guy, you must
Yeah.
be a MAGA supporter, or you must, whatever the thing
Yeah.
is, I don't like the generalizations. And I can tell
Right.
you're similar that way. There's
Yes.
another question about energetic balance that I want to ask you about your relationship.
Okay.
Another thing that I study is the element of growth orientation, right?
Yes.
Like when there's an issue and there's something that really kind of needs to be addressed, it's typically the woman who will bring it up. It's typically the woman who's spending time studying relationships.
Yes.
You've done some personal growth and development workshops, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yes.
When you look around the room, who's there? Is it mostly women or mostly men?
It's mostly women.
That's right. We
Yeah.
are more inclined to study that. Like it's kind of like maybe that's part of our job in the relationship is to be able to
Yes.
lead in that way. In your relationship, who leads in that department, you or your husband?
I would say I do. Yeah.
It's probably why you're still married and happy together. I
Well,
mean,
I mean, I always say like we're married today, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow.
I'm trying
But,
to think the last time Gil Ferman said, we should sit down and have a little chat about this little thing. No,
right.
he'll just be grumpy and pissy and
Yeah.
stumble around and bark and, give me thorniness. And then I'll say, there's something we need to talk about, isn't there? Let's sit down and chat after dinner. I can tell there's something on your mind.
Right.
And he will, and he wants to have these conversations. But will he say we need to go to therapy? We need to read a book on marriage together?
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and Julie, do you think that because I kind of view sort of, you know, growth and personal development, developing the relationship, things like that. I mean, I feel like those are kind of matters more of um intuition, emotion, things like that. And the feminine does embody those things. Would you agree that like that is part of the feminine role to sort of bring those things out in the masculine?
I think so.
Yeah.
I love the way you're describing how take charge your husband is about logistics, like if
Yes.
you're going on a trip, he's got everything all.
Yes.
And when it comes to maintaining the relationship, it sounds like you take on that responsibility naturally.
That's yeah, I mean, I've never really thought about it in those terms, but I think you're right. I mean, yeah, he's not going to be the one to say, just like you said with Gil, like they're not the ones to sit down and be like, I really think we should, talk about this or, this is really something on my mind that's been bothering me. I mean, yes, it's so much more of like task-oriented, logistical, practical stuff that they are, leading on, and then I would say the more intuitive stuff is definitely the feminine.
And I've done a lot of studying, so have you. And when he'll just bark at me about something, and I
Mhm.
know that it's not an effective way to communicate, and I know that it hurts my heart when he does it, all these years, I continue to try to say, can we say that a different way? Because when you say it that way, I feel la la la, this is how I
Yeah.
feel. And like, when somebody says, well, you're always this way, you always do this, it's like you're stuck, you're trapped, you can't go anywhere. So
Yeah.
it's really important that we talk about one thing at a time, one specific thing at a time. Well, there you go again, doing this, doing that. Oh, it's aggravating. It makes me wonder
Yeah.
sometimes if human beings really should be married.
Oh my god, Mars and Venus. I used to say like when I was younger, it literally in my mind made so like being gay actually made so much more sense to me because now you've got Mars going with Mars and Venus going with Venus instead of Mars and Venus trying to come together. I mean, now I think I have a different view in terms of like, again, I'm a person of faith. So I'm like, okay, God, put two opposites together to teach us, what it really means to love when it's hard or something like that. But yeah, I mean, Mars and Venus coming together is difficult.
we have to discipline ourselves to respect the differences
Mhm.
and to get better and better at what I call compassionate, courageous communication, where we
Yeah.
say what it is that we need and what we want. And when we give space to the other person to listen and to finish the sentence, because when it gets heated, nobody gets to finish their sentence. There's interruption, and I'm sure that never happens in your relationship.
Never, never. But one of
Um,
the things that really helped me so much that I learned in the book, I don't know if you've read the book, The Queen's Code by Alison
Oh,
Armstrong.
I'm a devotee. I have studied
Okay, yes.
forever.
Yes. One of the things she says in her book is that men, they always have a good reason for doing something. And I mean, I have to repeat that to myself like on the daily like, okay, there's a good reason he's doing this. But it really kind of like gave me such a different perspective on things that men do that are kind of irritating to women.
Yeah, and she's talking in my head all the time. What if there's a good reason for that?
Right.
What
Yeah.
if there's a good reason for why he said he was going to blah, 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 but it didn't happen? And if
Right.
we assume that there was a good reason, rather than just being accusatory, it makes all the difference in the world. She's got so many wonderful tips
She
and
does.
I have a question about when people get divorced, when they come to you, what percentage of the divorces would you say are what we call amicable, and what percentage are they hate each other and it's ugly?
So what I've experienced here at the law firm is probably a little bit, I hope that it is skewed because, I own a high powered law firm. It's expensive. The attorneys are amazing. And so we probably get the more venomous cases. I want to believe that there are a lot of people out there divorcing amicably that are not hiring us because they don't need us. So, from my perspective, most of the divorces are pretty litigious, nasty, venomous, etc. But I hope that it's just because that's what we do, and that there are a lot of people out there who are able to dissolve that marriage in a beautiful and peaceful way.
Yeah, I've heard about it many, many times where people say, we just our lives were going in different directions, different stages of life. It had sort of the relationship had run its course. And
Right.
sometimes it's because the kids are grown, maybe they had a business together and the business isn't happening anymore. And they have more time on their hands and like, I don't really like you as much as I used to.
Right.
And so then they decide to get divorced and they go through mediation and there's
Yeah.
no nasty yelling and screaming. And they're still friends later and they celebrate holidays together, sometimes vacation together. And
Yeah.
I'm always happy when I hear it that way. I just can't believe that you have so much strength that you can deal with that type of venom every day of your life. I don't understand it. I'd be like, oh, give me a meditation room or something.
Yes, that part is pretty taxing, and it's taken me, and I'm still I still have days where I'm not good at compartmentalizing it, but it's taken a couple decades to sort of learn how to, navigate that. But I will say it has been one of the best things for my own marriage because I'm like, ah, that is irritating, but it's not worth it to fight about it. Like we're good. It kind of gives you perspective of what truly matters in a relationship and what is really just not worth fighting over.
I agree, and I see it in my work as well. It's like people are out there, they didn't know what it was gonna be like after the divorce.
Yeah.
They start dating and they have a culture shock, and sometimes they come back to me and they say, If I had it to do over again, I would not have gotten divorced. I didn't know what I was getting
Really?
into." Yes, I hear it often,
Oh
often.
my gosh. Okay, I have not heard that. So that's real. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe once or twice, but like most of what I'm seeing and experiencing is people are like, "Oh my gosh, the divorce was the best thing I ever did." I mean, again, it could be skewed because I'm getting the really nasty divorces that the relationship was toxic or whatever, and that's what led to a toxic divorce. Wow, I can't believe that. They kind of
Hear it
regret
often.
getting a
Well,
divorce.
when they actually get honest with me, it's very often I get to know people quite well in my boot camp because
Yeah.
we do some pretty intense work together as a group, men and women together. And these things will come up on our office hours. And there was one night where we were in office hours together and somebody brought that up. Gosh, if I had known that dating was going to be this hard and that I was going to be this lonely and challenged in finding social connections, I might have worked harder for my marriage. And I polled the room, and half the people said if they had it to do over again, they would rethink splitting up their
Really?
marriage. Yeah. And now that was just one class, one group
Yeah.
of maybe 10
Yeah.
people, but it's interesting to me. And I wonder, you've probably seen some couples who thought they should get divorced and then they start going through the process and decided not to. Has that happened?
That has definitely happened. There is a fair amount of people who they get well on their way into the divorce and they're like, maybe we can reconcile. And yeah, I would say at any given time, we have about 10 to 15% of our cases that are in our system as on hold. Parties are trying to reconcile. So yeah. Um,
Thing.
and yeah, so which, I call it a win. Like if you had to see what this is going to look like to decide this is worth fighting for, then I call that a win and I hope it works out.
Yeah. I have so many questions for you. One of them is related to when people are separated, not divorced.
Mhm.
Um, I can't tell you how many people have said, well, if they haven't been divorced for 2 years, then they're not ready and I don't want to date them.
Oh,
Well,
yes.
I don't like the rigidity of that, because
Right.
you and I both know, especially some men who don't do well on their own. They don't. They're not happy
Right.
on their own, and they're going to gravitate toward a relationship because it's their natural way of being. And
Right.
that kind of guy isn't going to stay single for 2 years sitting around waiting for the clock to tick. So I think
Right.
it's a mistake for women to make that quick, and it happens with men too. They'll say, well, no,
Yeah.
no, not if she's still, if she's separated, not divorced. There's this one couple that were separated, not officially divorced for over 10 years. It
Yeah.
was complicated. You know how it can
Yes.
be, dividing up assets, businesses, whatever. And it was going to be hurtful enough to the businesses and to
Yes.
everybody's financial well-being that they decided not to get divorced until one or the other decided they wanted to remarry. And eventually he became my client. I have several of these where the guy said, Julie, I'd really like to hire you, but are women going to want to meet me if I'm still
Mm.
technically on paper with another woman? And so
Right.
it can be okay as long as I know the whole story
Yes.
when I'm pitching the introduction to her or to him, whoever I'm
Yeah.
advocating for, if I explain the situation. So what
Right.
happened to that guy, they ended up, he became my client. I introduced him to this woman. It was in Thousand Oaks, California. And there were two reasons why I almost didn't introduce them. One, because he was Jewish and she was a practicing Catholic.
Okay.
And that was a little unusual for her. She was hesitating. And then the other reason was he was still technically married. And she said,
Legally
I
married.
can't date a guy who's married. And there's so many reasons I wanted them to meet. So I said,
Yeah.
we just do the introduction, see how you feel when you're together. And if there's no chemistry, if it's not conversation flowing, we'll just let it go.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm going to tell you. They had wonderful, beautiful connection and
Mhm.
chemistry. And he courted her for a year and a half. And she insisted that she was not going to sleep with him.
Mm.
He was still technically married to another woman. And so what
Okay.
happened was they built their intimacy, real
Right.
intimacy, not
Right.
just, who's having a,
Physical. Yeah.
it was much more meaningful. And then the day
Ah.
that the divorce was final, he said, put on a pretty dress. We're going down to the courthouse and we're going to get married. We'll do the party later. I'm not spending
Wow.
one more night away from you.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
I know.
Wow.
It's truly amazing when it works out. Um,
Yeah. I think people don't really understand the process because so I'm a divorce lawyer in California. So California law has the date of separation, and that's when the law recognizes the marriage to be over. And that's usually when the people move out of the house, they might file for divorce, they may, they start figuring out how to share the kids. And then the divorce could last for 10 years until they're returned to the status of a legally single person. But in my view, once the date of separation hits, the marriage is over. I mean, that's when the law recognizes the marriage to be over. There's no more community property. There's no more like sharing of finances or splitting, after that. So I try to explain that to people that because sometimes clients will ask me, well, like, is it okay if I date? I'm like, well, that's a personal issue, but if you're running into people that have an issue because you're not legally single, please explain to them that once the date of separation hits, you're not acquiring community property anymore. The law is not recognizing the marriage. The length of the marriage is not still tolling. Like the length of the marriage ends as of the date of separation. So, yeah, I think if people truly understood the process and the legality behind it, they would feel less resistant to date someone that's going through a divorce but has separated.
Yep, it's interesting. Um, there's something else I wanted to ask you about the masculine feminine thing as it
Okay.
relates to divorce. I see a lot of resentment among women who ended up having to pay the husband.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like we don't expect that that would be the case. We expect if we're going to
Mhm.
get divorced, of course, she's the one who's going to get child support. She's the one who's going to get alimony. But because there are so many situations where the woman is stronger than the man is
Yeah.
financially, it goes the other way. And man, are women mad about
Yeah. Yes, that is an interesting topic.
it's like it's almost like Alison Armstrong will talk about it. Like we as women, we want everything to be equal and everything to be fair. Well,
Mhm.
there's nothing fair in life. I mean,
Right.
dating is certainly not fair.
Not
It's
fair.
not fair that slender people are selected more than heavy people, that
Mhm.
it's not fair that Caucasians are selected more than people from other ethnicities. It's
Yeah.
not fair that we want immigration, and yet when I line up a bunch of men on my Zoom consultations, it's the white guys the girls are picking. They're not picking the guy
Really?
from India. They're not picking the guy
Yeah.
who's from the Middle East, So when it
Oh,
comes to dating, it's not fair at all.
right. Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
life isn't fair. I mean, the sooner we all just accept that, the better off we will all be and, the suffering will be minimized, I think if we can accept that.
yeah.
Um yeah, it's not fair and I think the spousal support issue though, a lot of people call it alimony. I think we are just so accustomed to the men being the breadwinner of the family and therefore having to pay the women that I think we're just not used to it yet that the woman could have to pay the man. And I actually I represent mostly men and I've had some men before um who are like I can't request that. I'm not going to even though they might be entitled to some support, they're like I'm not doing that. And I'm like, well, okay, I understand that, but as your attorney, like let's at least use it for some leverage or something. We don't ultimately have to stick with that, but it might equalize some other issues in terms of asset division or whatever. But I think even some of the men have a hard time with it.
That's beautiful that they have that level of responsibility,
Mhm.
accountability,
Right.
that it doesn't feel right to them that it would
Right.
be that way. Is it also a function of who's requesting the divorce?
No,
Hmm.
that part has nothing to do with it.
It's really
Which
sad
that
when a guy didn't want to get divorced at all. He was happy in
yes.
his marriage,
Right.
and she asked for the divorce, and he has to sell his company in order to pay
Yes.
his wife. Oh my gosh, I've seen men break down in tears over these things.
Totally.
They didn't want
Yes.
to lose their children.
Yes.
Didn't
Those
want
are
to have,
like the most painful cases. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It makes me just think that we should spend a little more time in communication workshops.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
On that topic, what percentage of divorces that you see would you say he has more resources than she does, or she has more than he? I'm imagining it's changing as you've had your practice, but I'm curious what the percentage might be.
Well, is the question like who comes into the marriage with more resources? Because after a while, like the resources are equal because it's community property.
In California.
Yes, in California. Yeah. But I mean, in general, I would say it's still the men are usually entering into the marriage with more assets, and I would say the majority of men still are the breadwinner of the family.
So typically in divorce situations, the man is usually paying the bigger share of spousal
Yes.
support.
Correct. Yeah.
Curious. It's just so interesting to me how much we have the expectation and how much venom is attached typically when a woman
Correct.
tells me that she's the one who had to pay. And
Yes.
she looks at me like, can you believe that I had to pay? I'm the woman, you know? And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, we want the equality, except
I
for
know.
when it's inconvenient and we don't
Yep.
get, you
I
know,
know. Yeah. Yeah. We haven't figured out how to make it all make sense yet, I think.
exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have hope for us, Holly Moore?
Hope for us as women or hope for us
For
as men and
marriage.
women trying to come together?
I mean, is marriage meant for the long haul for our civilization?
Gosh, that is such an interesting question. One of my
We're
best
just
friends is going through a
projecting, but
divorce. Yeah.
mhm.
And yeah, so I'm having lots of interesting conversations because remember how I said at the top of the show, like, I don't, divorce hasn't really been a part of my personal life. Well, suddenly now at 43 years old, it is sort of entering into my life through very close friends that are now, sort of broaching this whole new world of getting a divorce. And, some would say, like, we're just not meant to be with the same person forever. I mean, I talked to my parents recently, married for 52 years and all of their friends are in that same, time of life, all married over 50 years. And I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't look too great. Like, there's a lot of clashing when you're in your 70s and still married and so much water under the bridge. Um, I don't I don't know. I still have a lot of questions about that question. I would want to think that yes, marriage is meant for the long haul, but historically, we were only ever supposed to be married for like 20 or 30 years and then we died.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
Yes.
right. And so sometimes people will give me a hard time if I'm introducing them to somebody who's been married 3 times. Well, heck, the guy's 70 years old. Each of the relationships was 15, 20 years,
Right.
and one of them died. I mean, it's like
Right.
we're
So
we're
Julie, what do you I know it's your show and I'm just supposed to answer the questions, but what do you think, is marriage meant for forever?
I wrestle with this question, so I asked it. Um, I think that our culture is evolving so
Mhm.
quickly
Yeah.
that our interpretation of what relationship might look like, should look like, ought to be more open-ended.
Mhm.
And I like to see people creating their own promises and rules for how their
Yeah.
relationship will be. Um, I watched one couple who survived living on opposite sides of the country because of jobs and kids and all this stuff. And their relationship looked different than what we normally expect a marriage to look like.
Mhm.
But they had rules and they stuck to them. They had boundaries. They could, have flirtatious conversations, but there was no dating with anybody else. There was no taking your
Okay.
clothes off with anyone else. There was no, making out. They had rules about it. And
Yeah.
then I have another couple that I know that has a pretty open marriage and they have rules about it.
Mhm.
Like each of them can have a relationship outside of the marriage, but not secretly.
Right. Okay.
To be open and honest about it. This is the person that I would like to
Right.
spend some time with, and I don't know what will happen, but I just want to let you know that this is what I'm thinking about. And
Yeah.
they've been married for 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is insane.
I
No, I
think
mean, no,
so.
it's I should say it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's just it's a different world right now, and I think that
Yeah.
we should all recognize that Ward and June Cleaver were first, they were fictitious, and secondly,
Yeah.
they're dead now. You're too young to even know. You never even watched Leave It to
I
Beaver.
did. I watched Leave It to Beaver. Yes. I mean, maybe it was reruns. I don't know. But yes, I am very familiar with Leave It to Beaver.
I mean, I'm 20 years older than you, and they were reruns when I was little.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, it stood the test of time, I guess.
I don't know, something about that Eddie Haskell. So
Yes.
this is really beautiful, and actually, you are giving me more hope about
Mm.
partnership
Well,
and
good.
marriage, in part because your own relationship is as good as it is. There's something I didn't ask you about that relationship, though.
Okay.
Yes, you knew each other from your your
Yes.
heritage, you both came from the same part of the world, but
Yes.
somebody made it happen. Somebody
Mm.
said, "You know, we need to go out and have a drink together, or let's go have coffee together."
Mm.
Who did it? Was it you or was it him?
Oh, definitely him. Yeah.
Because he's a take charge masculine man.
Yes, definitely him. Yeah.
I still hear it from women consistently. I do probably 3 or 4 different consultations, sometimes 5 or 6 phone calls every day, and I'm interviewing people. And there are a lot of women who are really uncomfortable initiating in any way. And men are
Mm.
telling me that they are waiting, they are begging me to beg women to, as we say, turn the cab light on, like they're at Starbucks and, and they say, I want high contact, I want smiling, I want, that's an invitation to the guy.
Okay.
That it's okay, I'm nice, I'm friendly.
Yeah.
Especially if a man's attracted to a woman, he's a
Okay.
little nervous about making that move. It's not her fault, it's all the other women who have been mean to him through the years. Gave
Yeah.
him the wrong phone number, gave him a phone number, didn't really ever expect to call him back or whatever, and after a while, guys just stop initiating until they
Right.
see that we're receptive.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, Julie, you
Or
know what one of the most interesting things has been is I have 3 daughters and 2 of them are in their teenage years and starting to get into the world of boys and dating or whatever. And one of the most fascinating things is to watch Jeff, my husband, tell them about that because they'll be like, Dad, this guy, he, you know, whatever, DM'd me on Instagram asking for my phone number or whatever. Should I give it to him? And Jeff's like, no, you make him stand in front of you face to face and face rejection like all the rest of us had to do, like a real man. Like, and it's just so fascinating to watch him and what he tells the girls about how this should all work. So I have a question for you, Julie, which is like, should women be initiating nowadays, or should we expect the men to be manly enough to risk the rejection?
Uh, you know, we have to have dinner together, my husband and me and your husband and you.
Yes.
We will wrestle with these issues because
Okay.
women have gotten so strong.
Yeah.
Men have become, I don't want to say weaker, but less inclined to initiate, less
Right.
inclined to pursue,
Right.
because they don't like rejection any better than we do. And
Right.
so I think that we call it the feminine art of initiating, which is
Mm.
dropping the hanky. It's smiling, looking
Mhm.
away, looking back, smiling again. Then he knows the smile's for him, right?
Right. Oh, okay.
I didn't initiate. I just let him
Right.
know that
Yeah.
I noticed him and
Mm.
that I'm friendly and I have a smile on my face, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
he knows I'm not that mean, bossy bitch lady. That's what guys are
Yes.
not attracted to. There's a woman
Right.
right now who really wants to hire me, and her energy is that of bossy bitch lady.
Yeah.
I don't want to take that on.
No.
She doesn't have, I mean, you radiate femininity. It's not just how you look, you're feminine, your hair's pretty. I mean, you look like a pretty woman.
Thank
But
you.
also you have energetically femininity. And
Mhm.
this woman I'm talking about doesn't. So the thing
Mhm.
I worry about, she says she's not finding any quality men out there.
Yeah.
Well, I I meet quality men every day of my life. That's
Right.
my problem, finding quality men. My problem is
Right.
getting the yes when I want it. And when
Mhm.
he's studying up on a woman's profile and she's got her business suit on and she's all serious and she looks really scary, it takes him a half a second to say no.
Right. Yeah. Mm.
So I had a woman who was a um, she was a trial attorney working downtown Los Angeles,
Mm,
and big job. But like you, she had a feminine nature.
mm.
And she said one of her challenges in dating was going from the courtroom to a date.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is a hard transition to make. Yeah.
We developed this whole routine where she didn't have time to go home and change and then go out for
Right.
dates. So she would bring her little bag with her. And in
Mm.
her little bag, which was a feminine little pink bag, she made sure it was feminine bag. She put all of her little things and her little perfume, and she put on her little bustier. She would
Yeah.
just change her underwear, it made
Right.
all the difference in
Yeah.
the world. And she'd change from her corporate shoes to her more strappy, sexy shoes.
Yes. Yeah.
And she just morphed herself
Yeah.
into a woman. And she didn't have any place to do this. So she would
Mm.
literally just go to the ladies' room and just
My
sit on
gosh.
the potty and
Yeah.
do breathing exercises to bring
Yeah.
herself back into her feminine.
Right. You gotta be able to flip that switch.
And then
Yeah.
brushing her teeth. That was the other thing that helped a lot.
Okay.
I'm just
Yeah.
going to brush out all that masculine energy. And I want to show up
Yes.
on the date as the beautiful, flowing, flowery human that I also can be when I flip the
Yes.
switch.
Well, it's really interesting because so when I get home, we have a hot tub, we have like a pool and a hot tub at home or a shower. And Jeff is always, so in the summer I go in the pool, in the winter I go in the hot tub. And if neither of those, it's a shower. But Jeff's always like, I know you have to wash the day away. That's what I always say. I got to wash the day off. And like it's, again, we have 3 kids. So he's like, nobody talk to mom until she washes the day off. So I go and I wash the day off. And that's kind of the same little ritual. You have to have something that is sort of like a ritual where you transition and now you can sort of be in your softness.
Yeah, I know that you've studied with Alison Armstrong because she talks about
She
transition.
does talk about that, but she kind of talks about that. Well, no, I was going to say mostly for men, but any one of us that sort of need to transition our energy. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's true.
Once I have made that switch from being in my office to being with my family, and then my husband like wants me to do some computer thing for him, it's like I've already shut that part of my brain off.
Yeah.
To say, sweetie, I can do that in the morning, but I've
Right.
already become a woman now. And
Yeah.
so I've
Become
already
a
moved.
woman. Yes.
And you don't want me to go back because I probably won't be
Right.
a woman for the rest of the night. You want me, you're doing your wife. So he has begun to understand that it is a conscious process that we go through.
Right. Yeah.
What I do is I walk my dog. I get
Yeah.
outside in nature and with
Yes.
the dog, and we walk the dog together. And that's where we have our conversations. Even if we're mad at each other, we still go out and walk the dog together.
Mm.
Meals, walking the dog, and binging on something together is
Yes. Perfect.
so. Do you guys binge together on something?
No, no. And actually, I've given up on that because I used to say, like, I want to watch TV together. I want to watch movies together. I want to like have that thing together. And we tried that for probably like 15 years. And we just never, he's very busy at home because he's taking care of everything. So he doesn't have time to sit down and, do that kind of thing. So that is not something that is a part of our thing. Um,
So he's
but
like my brother-in-law who married my sister, and I totally picked him out for her. He's like never just hanging out. He's fixing
ever.
something.
Yes.
Your husband knows how to fix things around the house too?
Oh, everything. Yeah.
Oh, and I
Yeah.
need you to send DNA for cloning. I do.
I know, I know.
It's hilarious.
Oh,
I got this guy that I just referred to. I always make the guy pick first. So he said yes to her. And then she was thinking about whether she's going to say yes to him or not. Now she's more high powered than he is, but he knows how to fix things around the house. And
ah,
so he said, I can fix anything. I can build a back deck. I can do whatever. And she's
yes.
like, I don't care if I earn 3 times as much as he does.
Right.
As long as he'll help me with my stuff around the house, then that is a good man. It's looking
Yes.
for the qualities that we really appreciate as opposed to what society and status and all of that say we
Right.
should be looking for.
I agree. Yeah.
You are just a delight. I'm so glad that I had a chance to bring you on the show. I can't
Thank
wait. We're gonna have to
you.
get our boys together and go
Yes.
double date and talk about all this stuff. And I want to meet a real masculine man.
Ah, yes. Yes.
But he is. You'll have to send me a
Yes.
picture.
Okay, I will.
Thank you so much for your time today, Holly. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Julie.
it. And
Thank you.
all
This
of
has
you
been
who are
great.
listening, yes, I hope you're appreciating the complexity of marriage and do we stay married? Do we not? As you're dating, it's important. You get to choose how you want to do your relationships. So all of you who are listening, I want you to go out there and transform me to we for yourself. Thanks for being here.